This is where the early stages of this type of application is really going to bring AI into the future. So now we've got a longitudinal data set on a known clinical intervention. We have multiple blood markers, right? So not just your typical lipids, but we got organic acids and mycotoxins and heavy metals alongside of genetics. And so now we can start to build the picture of what the interrelationships are. So we're very much at the correlation phase. We have a strong correlation of ochratoxin and behavioral-based improvement by eliminating that, but we don't know if that was causal or not, right? And so we can't get to causation until that data set starts building. So we're really just in kind of this empirical, let's look at correlations, interesting connections, but more importantly, also surfacing that back to practitioners, right? So you now get, let's say we've seen a relative increase in body weight. They've reported neurological dysfunction, and then if some of these other markers come together, can we surface an insight back to a practitioner so they aren't like trial and erroring it, but they're like, hey, did you know that 70% of patients like Bradley who have reported this particular income and have this blood biomarker have benefited from a low FODMAP diet intervention? Was this helpful, yes or no? And so that's really where the industry is going to next, outside of the hyperbolic claims around AI and learning. But we're starting to kind of pull all those data sets together to truly drive real efficiency for practitioners.
Welcome to Beyond the Scale. I'm your host, Bradley Davie. This podcast exists to educate and empower the next generation of healthcare providers. We're here to share powerful tips, tricks, tools, resources to help catalyze your growth with InBody's ecosystem of health assessment tools. Today, we're going to talk about cutting-edge health technology and how it's transforming the way practitioners are using assessments to optimize their patient care. And we're going to dive into Biocanic. And they have a mission to leverage their platform to empower health practitioners to streamline their data collection, personalize care, improve client engagement, and they have an integration with InBody, which means that a practitioner can have their patient test on the InBody, and then that data can be tracked inside of Biocanic. And game changer in functional and integrative medicine to be able to have these things together and overall gives a lot more power to making data-driven decisions so things are easier to access and insights can improve patient outcomes and efficiency of your business. So we're going to talk to Jeremy, who's the CEO and co-founder, and some success stories, real-world application, and what else is going on over at Biocanic. So if you're a clinician, health coach, wellness professional, you'll definitely want to stay tuned for this one. Our guest today is Jeremy Malecha, and he is the CEO and co-founder of Biocanic with over 25 years of healthcare and software-related experience. Today, he's the catalyst for building a new integrative medicine marketplace rooted in the power of health intelligence and consumer advocacy so that we can all gain more control over our health and wellness. He also holds a bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering from Northwestern University, and in addition to multiple patents in signal processing for medical applications. So welcome to Beyond the Scale, Jeremy. Thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, Bradley. Appreciate it. Really appreciate the invite.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's been a cool little journey to get to know you over the process of integrating and get to connect with you and see your office down there in San Diego with all the beautiful flowers. I'm always inspired to see you on video. So your degree is in biomedical engineering. I'm just curious, did you have any experience with BIA technology? Because InBody's a bioelectric impedance analyzer. Was that something that you studied in school or had any experience with?
Yeah, so great question. And very familiar with bioimpedance. So my background is biomedical engineering at Northwestern University. I specialized in what's called signals and systems. I don't know what it's called anymore. It was so long ago. But really, I was focused on doing things around signal processing. So things like functional MRI. So you're trying to do an MRI and then doing an assessment for like a structural architectural design in a 3D imaging kind of situation. That was kind of like my focus. When I graduated, I actually went to work for a company called Cardiodynamics, which was a bioimpedance company that was actually using bioimpedance to measure cardiac output. So oftentimes when we think about cardiovascular assessment, we think about EKG, right? So that is capturing the natural electrical signal to look at the QRS complex so we can look at arrhythmias, beats per minute, heart rate variability, etc. What this company was doing was actually using high frequency, low amplitude current. And then we were using bioimpedance measurements to then determine what was cardiac output or stroke volume, right? So we could look at how hard the heart was beating based upon where it was at in the cardiac cycle, and then using bioimpedance analysis to actually then estimate how much blood the heart was pumping at any given beat along the way. So it was a really cool, this was done through typically in an invasive procedure called a Swan-Ganz catheterization, meaning they run a thing in and then they inject a bolus of dye, right?
Uh-huh.
And so we were able to do it in an outpatient clinic setting. And so that was my first engineering career. That's where I did most of my signal processing. And as I jokingly like to say before, artificial intelligence was cool. We were doing a lot of the original artificial intelligence. So, but it wasn't like cheating that it is today in Amazon and Google, where you just kind of dump data and it does it for you. You actually had to go in and write the neural networks and the noise cancellation algorithms and you're reading a textbook and you're in MATLAB and LabVIEW and you're trying to do all the modeling. So yeah, so that was my experience. So I'm a huge fan of bioimpedance monitoring.
Fantastic. Where was it along the way that you kind of jumped out of that field, and how did you transition to where you are now to like see this opportunity, or what kind of opportunity do you see for what you've created, and what did you create?
Yeah. So I basically got to a point, I was, a bench engineer for about 10 years, and you get to kind of a crossroads. You're either going to go back and get your master's and PhD in engineering, or you're going to go into the product marketing side. And so I decided that I just didn't want to go back to school and do even more hardcore like engineering. I was really wanting to get more onto the product side. So I actually led their kind of EMR integrations or electronic medical record integrations. Then I ended up moving over to ResMed, which is where I spent most of my career. So ResMed is a sleep apnea company. So think about the CPAP devices you've probably seen or heard. When I first got there, they were just standalone devices. And then over my career, it became a connected device. So it got a cell chip on board, data got to the cloud, then there was decision support, and then it got into the payer system. So it was used for claims authentication and payment. And then we acquired into electronic medical records in the out of hospital or the kind of post acute care world. So DME, skilled nursing, home health. And then that led me into leading what is now their software as a service business. So we acquired a number of EMRs that tied into the kind of the data ecosystem that we had built for sleep apnea therapy. And then, like anybody in my mid 30s, started to see my personal health decline. So for me, as I've always been athletic, working out all the time. I was starting to have chronic back pain. I was putting on weight. I thought I was doing the right stuff, eating organic, gluten-free, working out all the time, sober-tober, doing all the things, yet my weight kept ticking up. And so it was about November of 2017 where I hit my peak weight of 240 pounds. And if anybody's interested, I have a TED Talk with a shirtless picture of me on it. Which just that was like a lot of people in the functional, integrative, personalized health industry, having your own health journey is really the catalyst for what makes you passionate about being in the space. And so for me, that was when we started Biocanic. I went through the process of a personalized approach. My wife's a practitioner, saw her struggling as a provider, trying to deliver these personalized programs at scale. I was like anybody else. I had a spreadsheet which had my body fat, my weight, my blood chemistry, my hormone data, trying to track all that. I had my supplement recommendations in a Word document, and it was all disparate, and it was hard to keep everything straight. And so that really became the concept of what we built with Biocanic. And so unlike a traditional electronic medical record, we are built for this idea of personalized longitudinal care over time. And so that's where our system really aligns with our providers who are, working with somebody 3, 6, 12, 24 months over time. And so that they can actually track and trend. And more importantly, the end user or the patient can actually see their data and the impact it's making on their particular biometrics over time. And so for me, hitting that key weight of 240 pounds was the marker for me that I was looking at. Now, there was a whole bunch of other physiological stuff going on, estrogen dominance, poor methylation, gut dysbiosis, all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, what I was solving for was I wanted to get back below 200 pounds and decrease my body fat, right? That is the most meaningful impact that you can see. And that's a win on the board, that you're on the right track and doing the right things.
And it's so far downstream of everything else that matters to get there, though, in terms of like, those are outcomes that are related to a lot of other things that people want to be able to track and see. And you had them, you're probably more intuitive related to this than most people, where you were putting together spreadsheets from your background in engineering, but a lot of people don't have that ability. But you saw the opportunity to be able to aggregate this together and bring it together. So when I look at your website, or if our viewers go and look at your website, I see wearables and devices, integrated lab orders, business automation and practice management, practitioner training tools, diet and meal planning, e-prescribe and e-fax, and then integrated invoices. Can you tell me a little bit more about that in detail in terms of the holistic view of what you provide now, and then maybe even what you think about in the future?
Yeah, I mean, so really what we've done is we've just kind of knocked off all of the key pain points for our customers, right? So being able to centralize and process the data out of the labs, being able to centralize supplements and medication ordering, documentation, follow-up, messaging. So what we're doing is we're building together an ecosystem where we partner with devices like InBody, or we also build out technology that makes sense for the use case for our practitioners, which would be like more along the lines of our centralized lab data processing. So yes, somebody could track and trend, say, LabCorp or Quest data alongside of their body fat and weight, but oftentimes our customers are using specialty labs. So things like advanced hormone testing, total tox burdens, microbiome information, food sensitivity, organic acids. That becomes untenable at scale when you have a lot of disparate data sources, right? So if you want to try to correlate, say we did a blood chemistry and advanced hormone test, we did a body composition analysis at day 1, and now they come back in at day 30 and day 90, you have to go back through all of those disparate data sources to be able to see, am I on the right track? Are we making the right things? Did body fat improve by X%? Are we, did the interventions that we recommended make sense for this individual and get them on the path that they want to be on? And so that's really the philosophy of what we built and why we kind of centralize and bring all that data together.
So can you show us in some sense what this looks like? If you want to do a screen share, and for anybody that's watching and that can see it, they can take a look at it, but also, you can describe it in a sense that if somebody's driving and they can't see it, then they can also hear it and maybe watch it later too. But we can also link your TED Talk in the notes too. If you want to share that, I'm happy to push it out as well.
Absolutely. I actually have two.
Cool.
One's about our view for the industry, and the other one's kind of more of a practical application for an end user.
Sweet.
But the data that I'm showing here is all it's my personal data, but it's tied to some demo accounts and my individual information. So this is the big difference about what we do. So what we're looking at is the dashboard view for this particular client. So we have our connected devices, our glucose, our InBody, and even our blood markers if we're tracking and trending that over time. But this is also the view that the patient also sees. So there is no patient portal. Everybody's on the same page, working in the same direction. So we have our notes and communication. We have our functional summary. All of this comes together in this single experience. So in this case, Barry's going to take the cleanse challenge. Maybe he's in a 30-day program for a liver reset or something along those lines. Simply can click in. So we combine learning management alongside of the supplementation. So it really becomes a full service platform for each individual. So if we're going to say, hey, we're going to go look at, watch this video, review this quiz, it becomes a really great and engaging experience.
So we're in the learning management portion right now where you were just at. So is that, so somebody would come to this dashboard to watch that, or is that integrated in any other way to transfer that knowledge? Does it go through any other places like a text or an email or?
Yeah.
Is
So
there an app related to this too, where they can see that kind of stuff within it?
yeah. So we have an app. We do SMS messaging and email reminders depending upon the individual. A lot of our practitioners, some people prefer text, some people prefer email, some people are using the app and push notifications. Really flexible depending on the individual's delivery model. And so anything like, even if we're looking at, if we go to myself, this is, if we go up here to this anxiety tracker, we do like self-reported engagement. So each night I'm going to get a text message at 8 p.m. asking me to self-report my anxiety level, but then also respond to any other questions. So when we're talking about compliance and behavioral-based reinforcement, now what we can do is we can actually have that view of what the individual is doing between sessions. Did you take your supplements? Did you get to bed on time? Did you get off electronics before 8 p.m. like we talked about? Oftentimes when you're in this longitudinal care model, what happens is 2 weeks between sessions, somebody shows up for their session. How are you sleeping? And they will then basically come in and be like, oh yeah, no, I'm doing fine. But they forget about the Wednesday a week ago, or they went to happy hour, they had stress at work, their kid got injured at a football game or something like that. And those are the teaching moments where people start to connect the dots. Hey, I had a really stressful day. My sleep tanked. I was super hungry. I was off the chart. And it's like, oh, now I need to reprioritize my life. And that's really where people are teaching our clients how to fish, right? And make those changes, because then they connect the dots along the way.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. And I see, like, objective measurements is one thing, getting blood work, showing up to a doctor to meet with a professional who has a large amount of wisdom is super important, but the application of that and the coaching of, like, helping somebody efficiently do all these things that we're talking about or we want to do for them, or a plan or a challenge, to help just motivate or hold them accountable, is what you're saying. You've got this built into the system where no matter what's going on, there's we can both fall back into this to have a certain layer of trust that I don't have to have it all figured out. I'm going to get the support I want, and I don't have to go home and make a spreadsheet for myself to
yeah.
figure that out. And there's like a certain level of maybe like trust and commitment that comes when you have a solution like this
Mhm.
that's able to transfer the knowledge or maintain the momentum in the process of working with somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And so when we kind of look longitudinally now across what's going on, this is what we call the functional summary, and this is what we call the snapshot view. So we have our scored self-assessment. So if you're doing things like a medical symptom questionnaire, a GAD-7, PHQ-9, we can now track and trend those self-reported scores along. Now I have a lot of data here. It's not everybody has as much, but we got LabCorp, epigenetic, food sensitivity, genetic testing, microbiome information, advanced hormone testing. And so one of those things that I was kind of talking about was particular to my journey, even though, let me go to the graphical view just to show you. This is an advanced hormone test. And so one of the things that I uncovered as a part of going through that process was, if we go to here, so this is the estrogen detox pathways. So this was where I was at when I was 240 pounds. And so one of the things that was important about my genetics is I'm a poor methylator, estrogen dominant. I was still carb heavy, even though I was organic and gluten free. And so what I was doing is I was overloading my estrogen system, which was driving the weight gain, right? And so now we have this objective marker alongside of what was my body weight and body composition at that time. And as soon as we started to uncover what was going on there, and so I shifted into a lower carbohydrate diet, still kind of eating organic, now all of a sudden that's where the weight came off, right? And so we have this great marker for my individual health journey that shows my improvement over time. So I continuously measure this again, so I can see that my estrogen detox is working well. And then I pair that to what I was seeing on the body composition scale and the body fat percentage, the visceral body fat that was coming through. You can see all of those markers aligning. So we see both the self-reported or the perceived marker that you see in the mirror every morning, but also tracking it with objectivity along the way. So it is, hey, I'm feeling great. My back pain's gone. I'm losing weight. My body composition is improving. And oh, by the way, my metabolic markers. Now you have that perfect storm of feedback for the client. And that client now all of a sudden becomes your referral engine as a practitioner, right? These are the outcomes that I can see in everything that we're tracking along the way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Can you dive a bit into what you see on the back end for the in-body results specifically, and how a practitioner can see the data related to things like weight, muscle, body fat,
Yeah.
streamlined in there?
Yeah, so all of the metrics from the in-body device can be chosen depending on what you're wanting to look at. I do
So
have
you can
this.
customize the view
Yeah,
of how you'd like to see it presented.
yeah. So this was a great example of actually, sorry, like that one's the one I actually want to show. So this is a concierge clinic in Houston, Texas that combines Aura, in-body, and LabCorp data, right? So in this case, they're going to be looking at weight, body fat mass, total body water alongside a certain blood chemistry markers. And then also they're providing them with an Aura ring to track sleep as well. So this becomes a really great feedback mechanism for the individual as a part of a membership model, right? So I'm going to get my body composition tracked in a highly accurate, simplified way. I can see my sleep improving and I can see my blood biomarkers improving along the way as well. And so this is totally customizable, right? So I had an example where we had people using a CGM monitor, right? So we have a lot of like nationwide companies that aren't necessarily doing like even medical interventions. They're just gonna be like, hey, we're gonna do a diet intervention, we're gonna measure your ketones and glucose, and we're gonna do a body composition on the way, right? And so now you get the objective biofeedback from the wearables and the devices. You go in, you get your body scan done, like I said, week 0, month 3, month 12, wherever that program looks like. Now it becomes like this full service benefit, right? So if we think back to, I guess pre-pandemic, people were doing kind of like online dietary programs, but you didn't really have that objectivity. And so compliance was really challenging. But now once you kind of put that data front and center, that individual end consumer or client wants to see those numbers being continuously improving, right? Hey, I was at 240. Now, and I remember this specifically. 240, 235, 222, 221. What happened? Oh, wait, now it's 216, right? And now that gamification, because of the objectivity of that data, becomes that engagement model that keeps me on track. And then more importantly, not just the positive reinforcement, but the negative reinforcement. And so we see that a lot in the industry where people will be like, okay, I lost the 10, fall out, they stop working with the individual practitioner. If they are not getting that feedback, and all of a sudden their clothes don't fit. And then they come back and they're like, okay, I want to get back on track. And now it becomes kind of this virtuous cycle of feedback where clients are really wanting to work with their practitioners and stay on track.
There's also, I think, a stickiness to having everything integrated in a way where when somebody does onboard, it provides a sense of trust that there's technology there to be able to show the progress. At least we think of that from InBody. Like when somebody comes in and you test their body composition, you're able to engage them, educate them, and then show them how you're going to empower them and help them along their journey. It builds a solid foundation. And then to take that the next level and integrate it with all of the other data and put that right in front of somebody is just a kind of a superpower as a practitioner.
Yeah. I mean, look, in the end of the day, the body composition metric is the most tangible metric any end user can have, right? So, even if, thinking about like the explosion of GLP-1s and semaglutide and everything, right? The demand is there because people are looking to see their body composition improve over time. And so just having that objective modality is much more understandable for an individual end user than say homocysteine being 11 and going to 8, right? That's I know what that means. Not anybody else would know what that means, right? So the blood biomarker is great. It's great clinically, but objectively, the body composition is what's going to keep people on track and coming back.
Yeah, I think it's more relatable. I've always thought about it in the sense of there's a lot of relationships among these blood work and body comp or different vital signs that people take. And it definitely helps it to make it more tangible because people think of that in conjunction with it. And it has, it's a little more downstream effect than the blood work or things like that.
Yeah.
But I wonder, built into this system, what if we think about it from the practitioner end, what kind of support or training or guidance would you have for somebody that's bringing an in-body into this? And is there a way that you're capturing the insights that you're gaining because you have the in-body data, but it's alongside of all of the other stuff that you're seeing? And I think particularly being from your background, you might have ability to understand some things that we might not even understand because we don't see that data. Is that something that's made available to practitioners as they come in? And how would somebody onboard with you and kind of connect the in-body or whatever other devices they have to move down that path?
So just in terms of onboarding, we're very hands-on with practitioners. We understand that most of them are busy and overworked. So our team is here to help people through the onboarding process. So we will spend as much time with anybody as they need to make sure that they get up and running. And then more specifically, especially with the in-body activation, we work with them to make sure that they understand how to get things going, get their API keys, get connected. It's a very simple process, but we want to make sure that we go through it in a very methodical process so that people know kind of, they're not just like, I don't know if you've ever signed up for a software platform that's like an enterprise and it's just like a blank slate. We have a lot of pre-built, assessments. We help people get their data up, get the thing.
Are the assessments customizable in a sense that anybody can create their own assessment for whatever they want?
Yeah, so we're 100% customizable. So we do have things like, hey, there's a standard intake form. Okay, grab that template, and then I want to throw my logo on it. And oh, by the way, I specialize in Hashimoto's hypothyroid. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I want to have this new section of thyroid-based questions in my assessment form. That's fully customizable, and we can help you build that out. We also have a team member that will build it out for you.
When it's delivered, when those are delivered, can that come through the app, or somebody just opens the app and answers the questions and it inputs it into their file in the back end? And cool.
Yep, exactly. So as soon as when they fill it out, the results are there. And then we also auto score self-reported assessments. So if you do have like a gut health assessment that's on a scale from 0 to 100, you can track and trend that over time. So let's say somebody comes in and they score really bad at like a 99 out of 100. You can have them retest over time and then track those results as well from a self-reported. Oftentimes an individual will be like, come in and like, oh, my gas, pain, and bloating after eating is like unbearable. It's 10 out of 10. And they get to like a 6 out of 10, which is a huge improvement. Mm-hmm. But you also want to say, hey, you still got a long way to go. We should get this down to a 2 out of 10, right? And so that's a really great feedback mechanism to also keep them on track and not lose sight of where they had come from as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So that's B2B. You're a B2B SaaS company.
Yep.
And what about the B2B to C? So now that I have implemented this, if I'm a practitioner and I want to help my patient understand it better, onboard them, is there like tutorials, or are there things that are helping the customer, supporting the workflow of the practitioner who's implementing it to streamline this?
Yeah, we actually do offer what we call Biocanic business automation, which is our version of the CRM called Go High Level. And so we actually have turnkey automations built out for our customers. So think about, hey, what's your lead magnet? Sign up, comment, book in the comments below on Instagram and auto enroll them to get their ebook, to put them into a nurture sequence to get them to show up to your webinar. We have all of that built out. And then we have our own community of practitioners that we help enable them, called the Health Intelligence Exchange, where we bring together practitioners who've been successful with ones that are just getting started to help them understand, like, okay, what's your niche? What's your message? Where are your customers at? Where do you need to meet them, right? If you are trying to target, let's say, baby boomers in Minnesota, you don't necessarily need a TikTok channel, right? You may be better off working with, local church groups or communities, but we have a ton of community that brings together kind of best practices depending on wherever you're at and whoever you're trying to work with.
Tell me more about the Health Intelligence Exchange and how that kind of came about and what that includes and what,
Yeah.
what's the vision of that for you?
Yeah, so the Health Intelligence Exchange is our free community, so you don't have to be a Biocanic member. So it came out of my experience being at a ton of conferences. So one can often go to a clinical conference. We'll just use Institute for Functional Medicine's annual conference. A lot of great clinical information. Then there could be a business mastermind with a lot of information around books, podcasting, and getting your name out there. The problem that we were seeing is that nobody was able to put the two together. So they get all this clinical information, but not know how to do it in practice. So they get all this great business information, not have the time to do it. And so what we're trying to do is bridge the gap. And so we want to talk about helping our practitioners learn from other successful practitioners. So we have a customer that will come on stage that will talk about their men's health optimization. So they run a multimodality clinic with a virtual reach where they will bring that person in. They use their InBody for body composition. They do longitudinal lab testing. And he literally will say, this is my system. I use Go High Level, I use Serbo, I use Biocanic. They're all integrated together, and my package is $12, $25, and $50,000. And so people, oftentimes people will undervalue their services, or they'll be, they're a clinician. They don't want to necessarily ask for what they're worth. And so we want to build that support structure so that people are like, yes, my package, it starts at $5,000. And this is my messaging, this is my audience, and this is what I'm going to put into that package and program. So I'm going to do an InBody, a comprehensive blood panel, a microbiome test, and a food sensitivity, and that's my entry-level program, and then you just go. And so our whole goal is just to empower clinicians to go out there and drive better outcomes for their end users.
Let's talk about that then, with what you see as successful in the market in terms of ROI or packaging, kind of new product development, and over the years, how has that evolved? Maybe where may people be still stuck that they haven't evolved to, and what could they move to?
Yeah, success always depends on the practitioner. So we have some practitioners that have an audience of 100,000 contacts, and they will run an online summit and sell 1,000 people into a group program in 1 week, right? That took a lot of work. That person has a lot of brand and a lot of reach. For most of our practitioners, it really stems down to one, target your niche and your audience, and then build a methodology. Where we see people really struggle is they are kind of all over the place. They're multiple lab tests, multiple things. And so, for example, a great opportunity would be, look, I want to start with a weight loss program for perimenopausal females, and I'm going to do an InBody, a CGM, and I'm going to do, let's say, an HbA1c, and you can use a low-cost, like at-home blood spot test, and we're going to look at lipids. You can bundle that package together and say, hey, look, my starting program is $1,200. So it's not one-on-one, but it's going to be 10 to 20 people in a group program, and we're going to talk about the data and how to keep people on track, talk about dietary decisions, talking about the importance of sleep, talk about the importance of supplementation. And oh, by the way, when we get to the end of that program, now we're going to convert them into that higher ticket program. And that becomes the recipe for success, which is get people in. You need to qualify them. There are a lot of tire kickers who aren't willing to spend money. So that's why you want to have that offer and then move them in. It's a lot harder to sell somebody out of the gate into a high ticket program if you don't have any customers. But once you start to build that audience, with that repeatable, scalable program that's providing that data feedback and the better outcomes is really what's going to drive those incredible kind of business models where our practitioners are thriving. And so that doesn't mean necessarily that you're doing a meeting with 100 clients if that's not for you, but thriving in being efficient, driving better outcomes, emotionally satisfied that you're doing the right things, and then you get your free time back to do whatever, be with your family, enjoy your weekends, not be tied up doing a whole bunch of documentation.
Well, what I hear you talking about is a value ladder. in
Yeah.
a sense of like having a low barrier offer, maybe a freebie at least to engage someone, and then you're trying to move them along to the next step. And I think it gives you a lot more control to say,
Mhm.
okay, everybody, I got everybody at this, beginning stage, and now I've got, if it's 3 tiers on it, I'm trying
Yep.
to move those people up to the next tier, and progressively maybe there's less people, but also it's higher cost to it,
Yep.
and the return on investment, or maybe the margin is higher and the touch is higher, but
Yep.
that gives you a lot more, I think, autonomy in your business rather than just trying to sell yourself by the hour, or by the time you spend with somebody.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's really where we see kind of successful people. But and more importantly, they've invested in putting the systems in place. And you get into this argument with not this argument, this kind of chicken or egg discussion, which is, well, I don't have clients, so I can't afford the systems. But it's like when you don't have clients is the time to put systems in place,
Yes.
because then when you do get clients, now the professionalism is higher, the experience is better, and now you've actually got the framework in place to actually scale. And that's where you get into some money mindset issues, and we really try to encourage people. Like, you don't have to go invest tens of thousands of dollars into a system. You can start small, get going, get your processes and your methodologies in place, but you do want to have them in place so that you can scale when you get that big group program going.
I feel like you and your team are probably in one of the best places in the industry to be able to strategically advise somebody, in a sense of like, somebody comes in and they're about to launch, or maybe they're changing a software, or they're thinking about, their business, they're challenged, they're frustrated where they're at. You've got a perspective where you can see how all these devices integrate together, what devices are being used more, and kind of map out a roadmap for somebody, maybe where I can't invest all this money right now, but what do you see for my future? Is that something that you do engage in as a brand, and helping people see that vision for the future?
Yeah, and that's kind of the foundation of our health intelligence exchange community, the HICS community. But our goal is to see successful practitioners. So not only do we help them with kind of, well, what's your offer, what's your methodology, and we'll help craft the systems around that. We want to be able to also help them understand if they're going. So we often get a lot of practitioners that are focused on the wrong things. They'll be like, "Oh, this needs to be certain perfect." Da, 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 da. And we're like, no, 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 no. Look, just get a client, figure out your labs, go work with clients, and go, right? And then people get into a bit of paralysis analysis, and so our team really encourages people just to be like, just go. We'll figure it out with you.
Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of people in the medical industry are not necessarily business people,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't necessarily trained like that. I talk to a lot of pharmacists, and the same kind of thing. They go to school and they're biochemist experts of like nutrition and mechanisms of action, but when it comes to running a business, there's a lot of challenge around it, and they do kind of stray and take
Mm-hmm.
the path of more resistance sometimes. So it's nice to have places to go, or advisors, or people that can help us see that path, and show us what's important for where we're at in our journey.
Yeah. Our clinicians just want to be clinicians. They don't want to be TikTok influencers. Well, there's a couple that do, but most people just want to get clients, work with them, drive better outcomes, and make a little money.
Yeah. So you mentioned AI earlier. I think I would have to ask you a question with all this data and everything that you have the power for. What do you see now that you've integrated, and then what do you see the future could be, in where you might be going with that in mind?
Yeah. So we're a little bit different in terms of how we think about AI. So artificial intelligence around large language models had 25 years of people arguing on the internet to train itself on how to speak and how to think, right, and how to create content. In our world of health, that data doesn't exist in the same volume that we have in Reddit and Wikipedia and everything else that those models have been trained on. So when we think about AI in personalized recommendations, we're at the first step of a marathon. So yes, we're starting to uncover the real world applications of broad-based metabolic data. So we have a really cool study that we're doing with Precise Health Solutions and Purdue University. It's called the Pearl study. So this is a pediatric autism study They did, it was a week 0, week 12. They did a number of specialty lab tests, blood tests, genetic testing. And what the interesting outcome was is that there's some really strong indicators around this. Each one of these kids in the autism study had a common SNP, and they have a lot of overlapping SNPs related to detoxification. They all were off the chart for a particular mold mycotoxin called ochratoxin, which is a food mycotoxin. And then doing a food intervention not only improved their overall ochratoxin markers, it improved their behavioral based scoring markers. And so this is where like the early stages of this type of application is really going to bring AI into the future. So now we've got a longitudinal data set on a known clinical intervention. We have multiple blood markers, right? So not just your typical lipids, but we got organic acids and mycotoxins and heavy metals alongside of genetics. And so now we can start to build the picture of what the interrelationships are. So we're very much at the correlation phase. We have a strong correlation of ochratoxin and behavioral based improvement by eliminating that, but we don't know if that was causal or not, right? And so we can't get to causation until that data set starts building. So we're really just in kind of this empirical, let's look at correlations, interesting connections, but more importantly, also surfacing that back to practitioners, right? So you now get, let's say we've seen a relative increase in body weight. They've reported neurological dysfunction, and then if some of these other markers come together, can we surface an insight back to a practitioner so they aren't like trial and erroring it, but they're like, hey, did you know that 70% of patients like Bradley who have reported this particular income and have this blood biomarker have benefited from a low FODMAP diet intervention? Was this helpful, yes or no? And so that's really where the industry is going to next, outside of the hyperbolic claims around AI and learning. But we're starting to kind of pull all those data sets together to truly drive real efficiency for practitioners.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I'd be happy to learn and share more as that comes, because I feel like there's a lot of power in that. As you were saying that, I was thinking about like three different perspectives, I guess, of AI as you were describing like LLMs and how they relate to what we see in conversation. And what you described to me sounded like more like objective data, where we're taking objective numbers and then we're trying to convert that into valuable insights that can help the practitioner or the patient or whatnot in improving the care. In your case, it's coming through the lens of a solution. But also, I think the other side of it is the subjective analysis of something like your stress question, right? Or questionnaires that people are completing, or common questions that somebody might have for a doctor, and how I feel like AI could help that subjective experience and maybe even educating or automating things that are simple enough for a provider to trust an AI in that case, especially if it's one that they've trained or they've trusted you to train that. Does that come through in your solution, or are we moving towards something like that where that takes the load off of the provider to get the support?
Yeah, I mean that's where we're going, right? And so the challenge is, if you look purely at metabolic data, there is no contextual information. So if I had a cohort of 20,000 HbA1c values, that's not clinically useful other than maybe reference ranges, right? We can look 2 standard deviations away from the mean and median, right? The context is what matters, right? So if somebody has a set of complaints, body composition markers, and they're struggling with chronic migraine headaches, now all of a sudden that becomes meaningful, because now we can compare that data set to other people that have chronic migraine headaches. And then also, if we can look longitudinally at somebody who complained about a migraine headache, and 6 months later that self-reported migraine headache went from a 9 out of 10 to a 2 out of 10, now the power of that data can start to be meaningful. So, hey, Bradley, as a practitioner, did you know people that have migraine headaches who also have similar sets of issues, say, high visceral body fat, they have liver inflammation on their blood biomarkers, have benefited from a liver detox protocol, increasing, let's say, bile acids and other kind of gastrointestinal. And then that's shown to be a meaningful decrease in visceral body fat, right? That is something that becomes clinically meaningful. But we still have to get there from the context perspective.
Yeah. That's great. Well, keep us informed. I feel like that's a really cool area where our partnership could expand and we could share insights or partner up stronger on. What other kind of things are you excited about kind of coming down the line for your Biocanic or our partnership or whatever else is kind of on your mind related to where you're moving towards?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really excited about where the industry is shifted right now. When I started this journey pre-pandemic, I would talk to, potential investors and they'd be like, nobody's ever going to pay out of pocket for care. That is completely changed, right? And for better or worse, the pandemic changed everybody's perspective about healthcare and who's going to actually help somebody be healthy. It's you, right? So now what we're seeing is this influx of people who are now actually willing to invest in their own health and wanting to get to the root of their issue. Whether it's a polyautoimmune person or whether it's just somebody who wants to optimize and under a quote longevity umbrella, now people are actually acting as healthcare consumers. That did not exist prior to the pandemic. We talked about cash pay consumer, you had Microsoft Health Vault and all this other stuff that people thought, but now this whole industry has flipped. So people are willing to invest. They want to see the data. It's no longer just acceptable that, hey, you took a particular product, so I want to try it too. I want to know why it's going to work for me. So that level of personalization has now become the expectation, right? Show me where I'm at and show me where I'm going to go. And that's really what I'm excited about because of how we can bring this data together and the market itself demanding this from our customers. So really excited about where our customers are at in this. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I talked to an MD who's leaving traditional healthcare to start their own business, and they're pulling together these individual clinics. So perfect example, I was on with a MD who left their health system. They're officially done next month. Built out a beautiful clinic, multi-modalities, so in-body body composition. They're doing blood draws, exosomes, PEMF. Clinic looks awesome and amazing, and they already have a wait list, right? Because it's so in demand right now that it's a really exciting place to be, and really excited to see, how we can actually turn the tide of where our kind of health outcomes have gone in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I see that trend too, where people are taking ownership of their health, and overall, it's good for them. It's good for the healthcare system. Everybody involved. It seems like we've really crossed a threshold, and you've said the pandemic a few times in this episode, and it was kind of like a shock and unite experience for everybody, where it gave us that opportunity to transition where otherwise it may not have been there at such a large scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that something that you saw that reflected in your business growth as well?
Yeah. I mean, during the pandemic, when I would have conversations with other industry people, I'd say it's great that everybody's motivated. They want to understand health. I mean, think about if you kind of rewind yourself back to 2021, people were talking about the importance of vitamin D, right? And vitamin D on outcomes and immune function. February of 2020, nobody would have been talking about vitamin D at all. And in 6 months, it had completely shifted the conversation, right? And so what I was concerned about was when we got to the other side of it, were we going to fall back to our old tricks, right? Were we just going to be like, okay, it's over. Now we're going to go back to $5.99, 5 appetizers, $5.99 at Applebee's, right? And it's not. It's actually continued to shift. Like even look at, the things like red dye number 5 being excluded and, taken out. The importance of, large brands for food, looking at what their formulations are, how are they going to shift and adapt for this new world where people actually care what goes into their food and what they're putting into their body. So my fears of falling backwards into our old habits, I think gone completely away. And I think we're really on a new trajectory of kind of thinking about how each one of us deals with our own health as an individual.
Is there anything else you want to share that we haven't covered yet? Just kind of an open forum for you to, share anything else that you want to here?
Yeah. No, I mean, look, we're here to help practitioners. Always happy to hop on a demo, take a look, drive around. We have free trial onboarding. We have a lot of community resources. So Biocanic, Biocanic, and it's came from the word biology mechanic. Like you plug your car into a computer, it tells you what's wrong. So that's the impetus. So it's biocanic.com, and just book a demo. Our team is here to help. We also have our health intelligence exchange. Like I said, you may have not time to use our product or work with us. Definitely come be a part of the community. We're all about elevating the collective knowledge of our practitioners, whether they're a Biocanic customer or not. And so you can go join our community, which is HIX, healthintelligenceexchange.biocanic.com. And then we'll have our live event, which we'll be getting that information out here real shortly, October 9th and 11th, 9th through the 11th, 2025 in San Diego. And it's a really great event, especially for practitioners who want to build their network of other practitioners. Just think, if you had make 20 connections there and you get 20 likes a post, that's going to increase your reach and help you get your name, your niche, your messaging out there. And so again, that's part of bringing it all together.
And we have 2 links we're going to post in the show notes besides your TED Talk links.
Yep.
InBodyUSA.com/Biocanic. So if you're interested in getting an InBody, we're going to hook you up with a discount or some package promotions or some cool things for our partnership here with Biocanic. So click that link and sign up, and a member of our team will reach out. And then for biocanic.com, we also have a landing page there /InBody. So go there and check that out. And Jeremy and his team will help you out too. So Jeremy, thank you so much for joining. And I'd love to check back and connect with you again as all this evolves. And maybe we can do some follow-up conversations or create some other types of assets that help customers understand the value that we're creating here together. And we'll definitely see you at the Health Intelligence Exchange and probably some other places too. So thank you very much.